there's not a system that can keep track of who has what, such that the lawyers and the business people are able to figure out what belongs to whom. So this is a classic case, actually quite a scary case. So Amazon had a problem with publisher had a problem with Amazon. And the publisher said, Amazon, you do not have rights to distribute that ebook. And Amazon said, okay. And so Amazon went into the Kindles of everyone that bought a book and deleted the book and gave them the money back. And you might say, it's okay, they got their money back. But if you step back for a moment and think about this, if you went and bought a book from the bookstore, and the bookstore, let's say Taipei Ethereum, went to your house, broke into your house, and took the book off your bookshelf, and left some money for you, on your table, with a note saying, sorry, we didn't have the rights to sell you this book, we're taking it back, you'd be like, this is crazy. That's just not right. Yet in the digital world, for some reason, Amazon is a company in the United States, and the United States is kind of built on this notion of private property. Like they say, like your home is your castle. Nobody can come in your home, right? And so you have this company that thinks nothing wrong of doing this. So where does this come from? Why is Amazon okay with deleting things that are in your digital home, but not okay with deleting things that's in your real home? And the reason is that you have different types of property, and this goes back hundreds of years to when property first was created in the UK. The first type of property was land, and individuals, so farmers, were in arguments with the king and the queen and the church about who could own land. And farmers started fencing in their land. It took a very long time, but over hundreds of years, the government was forced to deal with this, and they created the notion of individual private property. It came out of land. A similar thing happened for knowledge, so patents, trademarks, copyrights. Similar thing happened. Patent was originally a monopoly that the queen granted to her friends. So you could have a patent for tobacco, a patent for shipping. It wasn't for writing software, right? And so real property, intellectual property, both of these became massive, massive asset classes. Generated a lot of wealth for individuals. Software, pharmaceutical, all of these industries would not exist if it was not for intellectual property. And land ownership, a lot of the wealth in this world would not have existed if land could not be owned by individuals. So what is Bitmark? What do we believe? We believe that data is the next big asset class, from land to knowledge to data, and that just like in land, just like in data, you want the individual to own their data. And if that happens, you'll have a big economy. So what does Bitmark do? We do three things. First, convert your data into property. Okay? When something is property, it has rights. It can be legally protected. So number two, we help you protect it. So both legally and using encryption. And number three is to give you some ways that you can sell your data, sell your stuff. Okay? So what is a Bitmark? You can think of a Bitmark like a digital property title. You probably don't know what a property title is. When you buy a home, you get the deed to your home, and that deed usually stays with the bank. It says, hey, this is yours. When you buy a car, you get a title to the car, and so you take it to the DMV. If I sell you my car, you take that title to the DMV, they replace my name with your name, and now you own this from the legal perspective. So our blockchain stores titles and transfers of titles. It's very simple, no scripting language, dumb contracts only. The idea is that it keeps track of who has what property. So you have a fingerprint, that's just a hash of the data, some metadata, so what is the data, whatever you want. It's arbitrary key value pairs. The account owner, so these are ed25519 keys, and a digital signature. Okay? What data can you bitmark? Right? So this is something that's kind of fun. I'll talk a bit more about who we're sort of rolling our product out with, but we're really focused on health data, fitness data, location data, things that as an individual you might think doesn't have much value, but there's a lot of institutions that really love to have this data. Either they use it for research purposes, right? So on the phone, we can get, so your Bitmark software can get access to all of your health kit stuff. We also work with this company in the United States called If This Then That. I don't know if you've heard of them or not. But any data, so if you have a new post to Instagram, you can save that photo to Dropbox. And so we can make it to where you can bitmark that photo, you can claim it as yours, and you can sell it. Okay? So a whole bunch of different types of data that you can say is yours, establish ownership, tell the world this is mine, and create scarcity if you want. So maybe you want just 5 of these, or maybe you want 5 million, it's up to you. We think of what we're doing as trying to create a more healthy digital environment where things like the property rights of this data that us as individuals are generating is respected. Right? People, right now, we give our data away for free to Facebook and Google and companies like that. And we think we get stuff for free. You know, we get to use Facebook for free. But what we don't know is that they're using our data, they're selling it to advertisers. We don't know what they're using it for, how they're manipulating us, and we don't get any money from that. And you can say, oh, well, it's just my data, it's not really valuable. But Facebook is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, literally. And the reason they're worth that much is because of your data. And so, in most things, if like Foxconn was making a phone, right, for Apple, and Foxconn goes to the other suppliers and say, hey, you know, we'd like you to give us these screens and these CPUs and the memory for free because it's Google or it's Apple, and Apple's going to distribute this and you're going to get publicity. You know, the suppliers would say, screw you, Foxconn, no way. Right? So there's something very strange about the world we live in where individuals give our value away for free to these companies that then take it and sell it. Right? Apple has to pay a price for the components that they use in their phone. Facebook doesn't pay a price for the data that they use that comes from you, that adds that value. So data, this is the next big asset class. Land, knowledge, data. This is a huge asset class. And individuals need property rights to this now. Okay? So Chris, we're going to have Chris show you a demo of how the peer-to-peer network works. Okay? And then we can take questions. Is that okay? Yeah? Good? Well, it'll probably take a minute or two to set up, so.
I have to plug it into a VGA.
Okay, yeah, come on over here.
We need power as well. Do we have power?
Yeah, there's power right here. So while this is booting up, I want to ask you guys some questions, okay? So how many of you in this room are software engineers? Cool. How many of you in this room are working on something related to blockchains? Like your day job? So the rest is just like, you're interested or what? Yeah?
Some are from
Cool.
students and some are from financial industry.
How many people are students in here? Yeah. How many people work for banks or finance? Yeah. Just you? And you? Cool. Yes.
Sorry, came a little late. I don't know if it's appropriate, but one of my interests actually is that I'm trying to find information on Bitcoin,
Yeah.
blockchain. Most of it seems like it's coming from a very technical, software engineering and finance interest mostly. And so I'm actually coming at it from a social science interest. What's going to happen when it gets implemented? How is it going to affect our behaviors, our relationships? And it seems like, as a lot of technologies, we kind of implement it first and then try and figure out how it impacts us. And since a lot of us see this coming, we're not quite sure how it'll affect, though. It seems like we also need some attention on that.
Totally. I think you walked in just as I finished the last slides, but we didn't build a blockchain and look for a problem. We had a problem, and it turned out that blockchain was the right solution. And so we've been building for a bit more than 2 years. And like at that time, blockchain was 2 words. It was block and chain, and nobody really knew what it was. It was just like, it was part of what made Bitcoin work. And we were huge fans of Bitcoin, and we had this problem, this really specific problem in that how do you transfer ownership of digital assets? So like you have a Facebook account, you have a Twitter account, you have ebooks, you have music. How do you give these to people? So myself, I was, my wife got pregnant, I was having a kid. She was having a kid, but and I didn't do any work, it was easy. I really started thinking about, okay, these assets, who owns them? Like, how do you pass them on to future generations? And what I since realized is that you don't own them. Like you as individuals, you don't own this. It's kind of like renting or leasing. The books you have are not yours. Your Facebook account is not yours. Facebook can delete it. The photos you put on Flickr, when you die, they terminate. So we started asking ourselves, okay, well, how can we change this? How can we make it to where individuals have ownership, have agency over the stuff that they create? If you take a picture, it's yours. But if you take a picture and put it on Instagram, it's theirs. Like, why is that? Right? That's crazy. Right? I mean, we figured this stuff out, like 200 years of democratizing who could own what. And then in the internet, now we don't own anything at all. And so for us, it was, if you tried to go to a government and say, hey, I want you to register all of the Instagram photos, they'd look at you like you're insane. But if you said, okay, well, if you want to allow individuals to register photos so they could talk about who owned what and keep track of that stuff, how would you do it? You could do it as a central database, but then you rely upon one company to control all that stuff. And so we said it would be interesting if we could take the underlying technology of Bitcoin and generalize that to not just money, but to property. We actually built the first few prototypes on top of Bitcoin, but it turned out to be not so good for that, which we can ask, we can kind of go back to more technical stuff there. But I think sort of the social implications are that, so we were trying to file some patents in the early days when we were developing some of this stuff. And it was like $15,000 to work with a patent lawyer in the US, and then once you patent something, you then need to patent it in 27 different countries, which is insane. I mean, that's a crazy amount of money. And it's ridiculous because right now everything is global anyways. So the blockchain systems are interesting because they're the first type of infrastructure that can actually span countries. And as long as two individuals want to exchange something of value, you don't need a third one to tell them they can or they cannot. So that's really interesting, I think. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
I have a question about
Sure.
why there's no big player on this market.
Sure.
Do you think this is so important? Why?
Yeah.
Can you explain?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
You mean like why wouldn't Google or one of those big guys do this?
Yeah.
So if you look at, and this kind of goes back to my point about Foxconn versus Facebook, right? So Foxconn has to account for the components. There's a real cost. There's a BOM, right? If you guys have done hardware, you know what a bill of materials, a BOM, right? Facebook doesn't have to account for. Facebook doesn't have a BOM, but if you think of the bill of materials of Facebook, it's all you people. Like it's all the people that use Facebook. So these companies that are operating in these digital networks, they benefit quite a bit from having bad accounting, right? Where not all the value is actually in the accounting. Right? And so, so first off, it's really early. It's really early, like in this kind of blockchain digital asset space. But then second of all, like the incentives for the big people right now at least, you're asking to change their business model, which is perhaps like the hardest thing to do for a company. Yeah, a company can, so the reason banks come into this room is because a blockchain for a bank is an incremental technology. It doesn't change their business model. Bitcoin, Ethereum, well, that changes their business model. So banks can embrace blockchain, but they cannot embrace Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin is a different business model. Blockchain is not a different business model. There's nothing new about blockchain. Blockchain is, digital signatures, distributed ledgers. Those have been around since the 80s, 70s at least, right? But this idea of being able to exchange value without intermediaries, that's different. And so these people that act as intermediaries, the Facebooks, the Googles, I mean, even Apples for that matter, right? They'll be slow to embrace this. It's hard for them.
Here's a question from Facebook.
Yeah.
Why Hyperledger, not other protocols?
Sure. So actually, we're trying to get our protocol into Hyperledger. Why Hyperledger? My previous company, we were working on an open source mobile phone. And so I know some of the people at the Linux Foundation. I respect the Linux Foundation. I think they're very reputable. They do good work. And there's these consortiums. And the consortium helps because it helps to drive standards. It helps to kind of have some base level language to talk about what's going on. And so you can look at like the financial consortiums like R3, and those are concerned about sort of financial assets, financial settlements. But then if you ask yourself, what are the non-financial use cases of blockchain? I think those are very interesting. So digital assets, ownership, supply chain, these sorts of things. And we liked the positioning of Hyperledger. And so we decided that that would be a good one to join. Yeah. Did that answer the question? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't respond, so I say it's okay.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Joelin, I think this week, a couple of days from now, he's going to talk more about what we're doing with Hyperledger. Yeah. I think we were actually the first in Taiwan to join Hyperledger. I think. Yeah.
Maybe we just have to share it down.
Sean, why do you choose Hyperledger, not Ethereum?
Well, I thought it was differently. So Hyperledger is really private blockchains.
Okay.
It really is. I mean, that's like it seems like their focus is on industrial applications of blockchains, right? And to date, like those are private. Right? And so if you're in the public blockchain space, then you have Bitcoin, you have Ethereum, and then the question becomes, well, why didn't we build on Ethereum? Why didn't we build on Bitcoin? Yeah. Why? So fundamentally, this is difference between property and money. Okay, so Bitcoin is money. the tokens that you're exchanging on the Bitcoin blockchain and also the Ethereum blockchain, right? So Ether, these are interchangeable. They have no owners. They're it's supposed to be a currency. Right? And so like if I have like Taipei, right, and you have that, we can change them. They're exactly the same. Okay? But your data is totally unique. Right? What makes something a property is that it belongs to someone. And so in the blockchain level, on the actual transactional level, you need the ability to verify the ownership of something. Right? And so what we realized after developing for quite some time is that we needed to have, on that protocol level, the ability to have ownership. Whose is this? To have like the tokens, right, if you will, to not be interchangeable, to be unique. Right? So in the Bitmark blockchain, every one of these properties is unique. They're not the same. They're not changeable. They're not interchangeable. Every Bitcoin is interchangeable. In fact, the moment Bitcoin is not interchangeable, you break it. Yeah, that's the way the AML, like the anti-money laundering, the know your customer, all of these things are about how do you attach identity to money. And once you do that, once you attach that to money, you break the value of money. What makes Bitcoin and what makes Ethereum interesting is the fact that it does not attach identity to it.
One
Is it
more
working? Sure.
question. Have you heard of Scribe.io?
Yes.
Okay, and
Yeah.
what's the difference between your platform and...
Sure. There's two main differences. From the business kind of social, let me always start there. From the business social perspective, a Scribe, Monograph, these are different people that are trying to register digital stuff on the blockchain. And their perspective is very much from licensing. So an easier way to license, a more efficient way to license. Our perspective is we want data to be an asset that's ownable by an individual. So that starting point is different. A Scribe uses, they use the op return codes. So they use the scripting language to store within the Bitcoin blockchain. There's another company called Chronicle, which stores stuff in the Ethereum blockchain. And so we have our own blockchain. It's unique for property. So I would say kind of two things. Technically, very different blockchains. And business-wise, like concept-wise, one is about ownership, one's about licensing. Yeah. Yeah. Is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I've set up on this thing is basically a minimum network of several Bitmark Ds running, and they're hooked up to a single miner and a Bitcoin for the payment system. Here, this current screen is showing you a snapshot of the state of the blockchain just taken a few minutes ago. You can see that the block number near the beginning is different on nodes 3 and 4, as the block was just sort of being mined and propagated through the system at that point. It's been running for a while, so there's a new block being mined already at 604. One new block has just been mined on this one. And I'll show you the... This is my script that is running, and it's continually sending issues into the blockchain. Let's scroll it back. Stop it a minute. Scroll it back so you can sort of see some of the JSON requests that are going in. Now this is showing a basic issue request for several assets. You can see the asset. Get the assets there. Here's the asset data. It has a fingerprint, which can be any string you like. The metadata has like key value, so you can choose whatever you like in that data. and it has a name, that's just any string. Now here we have the public key of the registrant and of course the digital signature. And the asset has issues. And you can find the transaction ID there. And I'll show you that this is one of the primary functions of the system, is to provide the provenance from a particular item and show you which one's the owner. Now we can also transfer this item. Now. So the second main function is to provide a transfer. This is my command line program that I identify my configuration. I'm going to transfer that issue to some other person whose name is this one. You'll notice it's asking for a payment. And currently the supported payments are bitcoins, and it's telling you which address to pay and how much to pay. And for convenience, I have a command line that will express the Bitcoin payment, which I can send like that. And the local machine is a bit slow, so it'll take a while to process. What this is basically doing is embedding this hex value into the op return of the Bitcoin blockchain. This is just a opaque number that we use to identify the payment record. This is the payment address and this is the amount to pay. Not sure why it's not working. It's okay. Well, I think they're probably overheated. Try running it again. Oh, okay, it's gone through this time. And we've got the Bitcoin transaction ID. We need to generate a few blocks. And then we need to send a receipt. This is a values in.
Do you guys follow what he's doing?
Maybe.
So
This last part is a bit of a hack because I have to tell the Bitmark Ds where the transaction is being paid. I'm modifying it at the moment to get rid of that function and have that fully self-contained inside the Bitmark Ds so they can determine payments automatically. If we go back and get the provenance. If I finally, so the transfer shows this ID. We now should be able to see the provenance. No, nothing yet. It's not been mined yet.
So can you explain what this command do?
This can, let's see, let me just generate just to make sure. What we're trying to do with these series of commands from the transfer, we're trying to transfer from my ownership to another person. Let's see if provenance will come up. This is the previous provenance. Somebody, me, has made an issue of this particular asset. So I've said I've made a copy of this item and I'm intending to transfer it to another person, which is what the second, I'm still the owner of it, so I'm not sure if something's gone wrong. Still waiting for it to should have my script going.
So is this 7 nodes running on your local?
Seven nodes running on here. I'll go back to the.
Oh.
I've got here. This is my mining program.
Oh.
I've got here a Bitcoin server. I have 3 Bitmark Ds running in this window. And another one, there's 4 to run 7. I've got a script here monitoring things, performing issues to stress it. You can feel it's getting very hot. And then it's not received any more issues yet. Probably have to wait for a few more processes to go through, a few more blocks to get generated before we can see the transfer. That one just issued 3 more items. And as you can see, that these are the number of outstanding transactions that haven't been mined into blocks. And all nodes are not actually up to date yet. This one's ahead by 1. It's not completely propagated across this network yet. It should be reasonably quick on localhost, but unfortunately the CPU is stressed a bit. We're waiting for something. I can perhaps see if I can find some logs. Just put up the log so you can see the sort of things that's going on inside the Bitmark D. It's preparing blocks to send to the miner. And maybe you'll see it's sending out queries to adjacent nodes. It's scanning the local Bitcoin to see what's happened there. I don't think we've seen the CPU is quite low power in here, so it struggles to mine. It takes quite a while. Yeah, perhaps I should explain what the mining hash is. We're using a very secure hash for this one. We're not sticking with the Bitcoin hashes. We've completely replaced them. We're using SHA-3s for the Merkle tree, and we're using Argon 2 for the block hash to force it to be CPU mining. So we don't want ASICs to mine this. Currently, we're looking to keep it away from that. You can just actually see a block that's got created and was broadcast just there. Maybe that. Yes, okay. Finally got it mined. We can see the issue now, owner has become false, and I've transferred it to a new owner. You can see that the owner has got a different key. Sorry, it's scrolling the screen. So we could actually do another transfer from this top item, and that TXID. I'm afraid it's being rather annoying on this small. It's gone into the wrong resolution, so it's a bit difficult to see everything here. That's the latest transfer. There you go. You can just about see it like that. The transfer is owned by this person. As you can see, it's different from the original owner here. It issued it. And the registrant, you notice, is the same as the issuer. I issued the copy, I registered it, and I transferred it to a second user here. Perhaps you want to ask some more questions about that. Maybe I can explain a little more clearly how the things
So
work.
you can name a transaction. I see that this is a transaction, right?
Yeah, that's a transaction.
And the record is the asset. Okay.
Yeah, this is the metadata basically inside the data item. So each one of these is 3 transactions, and they form the chain. Yeah, chain of ownership. So you can trace back. This transfer links to this issue, and this issue links to this asset, which has got the same key here. Yeah. So,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
How is the ID generated from? Because Bitmark tried to solve the who owns what,
Yeah.
and how to, in this case, you try to use an ID to identify who, and some ID to identify the asset,
Yes.
and how to generate those ID for
The asset or the
and both.
okay, so people are just public keys. Right?
Yeah.
The asset is a SHA-3 hash of the data itself. Yeah. So your data is stored on your computer. Could be in the cloud. Like you store it yourself. And then when you transfer something, what the software is doing is it's just checking to make sure, hey, this is the same thing you said it was. So I'm going to sell you my data, or I'm going to sell you a photograph or a video, whatever that thing might be. you want to be able to authenticate that. So you want to know, okay, it came from me, so you're checking the public key, and then you want to know that it was the thing I told you it was.
So, the first one who claim the digital objects is his or him will own the digital object in the Bitmark system.
Yes.
So if the real digital object in the real world actually belongs to someone else,
Yes.
and did the Bitmark have a facility to identify it?
Yeah.
People really have to be.
So, like, here's what's interesting about that question is humans have been working on that for thousands of years, right? So for 200 years at least, in law, they have really elegant solutions for ownership, right? All you have to do is know who belongs, like what belongs to whom. Okay. Now the problem is in the digital environment, there is no registry, there is no record of who thinks whose is whom. Okay. So let's say, for example, there's a Beyonce song, okay, and I register this Beyonce song, okay, and let's say you are Beyonce, okay, just okay, so, somewhat similar, right? So we both register this song, okay, on the Bitmark blockchain, okay, and I start selling it and he starts selling it. What happens? Actually, this is super easy for the courts, right? This is the easiest possible thing. They're like, what am I doing? You know, I am like, Sean, you are not Beyonce. Right? You're doing something illegal. That's like the super, like the most easy thing on earth for lawyers to deal with. The problem is that normally you have kind of law, and you have law figures out, okay, this looks like something, people should own this. But tech somehow kind of jumped ahead and said, hey, we're going to make all this stuff, and all of this stuff is not going to belong to anybody, right? And so our perspective is like, no, like people are still making that stuff, right? So just give them an easy way to say, hey, this is mine, right? And is it really yours? Well, that's what courts are good at. That's what lawyers are good at.
So you leave the legal question to a lawyer.
Totally, they're really good at that. Yeah, they just don't have the tech. Like lawyers have no solution to this problem, right? Like, you say that data is mine. The lawyer says, how? Prove it.
But when you make this solution to the code, fallback
Yeah.
to the code,
Yeah.
so it may be too expensive for most people to resolve that.
Yeah, so that's what's so great about digital stuff is you can encrypt it. And so you have the ability to, so it's not really fair to say like code is law, but in the digital world, if Facebook says you can't do that, and they did not make a software that lets you do that, you're not going to do it, right? So, like, can I go to the bank and can I take all the money out, right? There's a law that says no, okay? But if I have enough force, I can go in there, I can get it, okay? In the digital environment, no matter how much force you have, you're not going to break somebody's encryption. You're just not going to break it, right? And so you have the ability to kind of combine. What I think is special about Bitmark is we're trying to combine law and code together. So our perspective on ownership is nothing new. Lawyers figured this out hundreds of years ago, right? We're just giving them the code that would allow that to be really clear and really easy for people to understand. Yes?
First of all, as
Yeah.
a lawyer, I'm so great about this because you create a lot of job for lawyers. But my question is, in terms of the property right,
Yeah.
you try to do this along the line of like intellectual property, so you have certain life cycle of the right, or more of a real property having in perpetuity of the right. So what kind of right you're thinking about?
So, okay, you're a lawyer, or yes? Okay. My dad's a lawyer. He does estate planning, if that helps, so you kind of get more perspective. So, property rights are regional. So property rights in the U.S. are different than property rights in China, they're different than property rights in, say, Vietnam, Taiwan. All have different sort of, this is back to the social stuff, right? So how a society agrees upon who gets to use what, who owns what. These are property rights. Okay? So what our system is an ownership registry. So how the ownership can be used in what places, this is a question for property rights and lawyers in specific jurisdictions.
So you don't check the legal scheme before you register them?
No. All you're doing when you register an asset is you're asserting ownership. You're saying this is mine. Okay? Do you have rights to do that or not? Those all then become sort of follow-on business, societal questions. The real problem that we're solving is just how do you establish ownership to where an individual can assert ownership. When you do something creative, when you take a picture, when you write a novel, these are all self-declared. You are asserting that you are the author of this work, right? And the courts know how to deal with that, right? In the digital environment, you need a registry so people can assert ownership, so it's clear. And then that fits right into how the lawyers know how to deal with stuff. So this looks just like contract law. You know, was there a signature? You know, did somebody make this? When did they make it? If I sell you something, you know, is there a contract for that? Not really a contract like smart contract, like, you know, Ethereum contract, but like, was there intent? Like, did I actually sell it to you? Right? And law cares about intent. Right? You guys probably are aware about the DAO hacking.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, a lawyer's perspective of the DAO hacking is going to be very different than a technologist's perspective. So, a technologist, was the DAO hacked? No.
Yeah, no.
Not at all. There was code that said you could do that. That person did that. What's illegal about that? Nothing. It's perfectly legal. Right? There was no violation of physics. There was no violation of computer science. The code said you could do that. That person did that. Okay? Most people won't be satisfied with that. Why? Because law is different than code. Right? Law is about intent. The intent of the DAO contract was to crowdsource funding opportunities. And people put money into a smart contract with the intent that that money was to be used for investment purposes, not for some person who's smart to go in there and take the money out. Right? And so, from the code perspective, the contract was perfectly fine. There was a bug in it. Okay? But depending upon whose perspective it is, either it was a bug or it was a feature. Right? From the lawyer's perspective, that's a hack. It was hacked. It was stolen. Which one's right? It's a really hard question to answer. You can't answer that question. It depends on whose perspective you're looking from. A lawyer would say that was hacked. There was intent. It was supposed to be used for one purpose. Somebody hacked it for another purpose. An engineer should look at that and say, no, that wasn't a hack at all. That was a bug in our program. Right? These are all very, very hard questions. They'll take a long time to get sorted out. Yeah. We didn't put a scripting language in our blockchain for the reason that we try to be very simple. This is a registry of ownership. You can transfer things. It's clear who has what. Smart contracts can be layered on top. Dumb contracts probably come first. Yeah. Yeah.
How would these Bitmark ideas
Yeah.
with the Creative Commons or
Yeah.
all these other internet or property rights? Or
Sure. The first thing to understand is that things like Creative Commons, things like GPL, these are all hacks on copyright law. Okay, so copyright law is a particular property right of intellectual property. Okay, so somebody that creates something, you have copyright to that. You can sort of separate these two. You can make copies, right? That's like a distribution right? And copyright is the right to make copies, literally, right? Now, our system is not about intellectual property. Just like the IP system is not about land. Okay? So within digital stuff, some things will look like copyright, and our system can handle that. But it's no different than how people would make copies now. You could say each of these properties is a copy. That's okay. So I have a photograph. I register ownership of this photograph. As the creator of this, I have the copyright. So I can produce copies. I sell them to you. That doesn't give you the right to make more. Right? I could register the copyright as a property and sell it to you. That's okay. Right? So ours, if you will, is like one layer higher of abstraction. It's on the property layer, and specifically saying that digital property needs to exist. So you have real property, land, you have intellectual property, of which copyright is one of the sort of aspects of that. You have trademarks, you have copyright, you have patents. Right? Those are intellectual property. And you have this third category, which we believe has to exist with data. That doesn't exist right now. Yeah.
And all the transactions has to be like volunteer from the owner. For example, professor from the university notes on the internet.
Yeah.
And you have property over those notes, where you allow the copying all these things for different people to take them. These would be implemented on that. This would be like would help these kind of transactions.
Yeah. Do we have 5 more minutes? Is it okay?
Sure. It's okay.
Yeah. Is it okay?
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, but because next speaker is our organizer, so it's okay.
It's okay. Who's the organizer?
Yeah.
Can I take 5 more minutes of your time? Is this okay?
No problem.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
As long as people are talking, we don't have to follow the schedule.
So Chris's demo probably was satisfying for half the people in this room. Okay. I want to show you a demo for the other half. Okay. So so Chris showed you the back end, the peer-to-peer network. Let me screen share real quick.
Oh, thanks.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
So everything Chris was showing you was here, right? These are the peer-to-peer networks, the nodes. Okay? I can use this, I guess. There you go. So Chris was showing you a demo of the Bitmark network, the whole peer-to-peer system. He was zooming in and showing you how the proof of work is functioning, all of these kind of things. I want to show you our apps, so like the high level, like how you would create a property. So he showed you like how you create a property from like the binary stuff, like the really, really low level things. You download our software, looks like this, okay? You come in here, you make a new account. You don't need to ask permission. So I set a passcode, so your Bitmark account is entirely local. It's one of these public-private key things. Once you get in to the system, you see these kind of sections, your properties, listings. You can list your properties for sale. You know, they're yours, you can sell them. You can connect in IFT. So like you could do something like every time I take an Instagram photo, automatically convert it to property, list it for sale. If I have new location data, automatically convert it to property, sell it. So your location data is worth about $150 a year, US. You can, that might sound small, but you can imagine lots and lots and lots of this data being your property, and then this provides like a base income. That would be nice. So I issue a Bitmark. I take a file, a piece of data, something on my computer. I'm a big fan of this app. It's called the Reporter app. It runs on my phone. It just gets information about my environment, who I'm with, where am I, how many steps I've taken, what's the weather, what's the humidity, stuff like this. And it writes it into a JSON file. And I back this up like every day. There's a script that does automatically. So I'm going to Bitmark this data. Might be interesting to somebody. So this is called Reporter data. So this is from the Reporter iOS app. So this is, what is this thing? Right? So we showed you the metadata. This is metadata. Okay? And then how many do we want? Right? So this would be like copyright. I want to make copies. Okay, so as the owner of this asset, I want to make digital properties of it. Each one can be tracked. Each one can be sold. So let's do 3. And then I'm signing it. So I'm saying that yes, this is mine. I have the rights to do this. And then this is going to broadcast it. So this is going to go back into Chris's network. So we're pushing things into here. Okay. It will take 1 to 2 minutes roughly for the system to mine it. You can see right now there's 3 of these because I made 3, right? And the state is verifying. Okay. In about a minute and a half, once it's finished, I will list one of these for sale. And then I could share this link with somebody. I could post it over social media, and then you could buy the data. When you buy it, what happens is the ownership gets transferred to the person that's buying it. So money comes in, ownership gets transferred. That person connects into my computer, peer-to-peer, and the asset gets transferred. Okay? Yeah. Yes?
How do you deal with the transaction? So how do you... so,
yeah.
you don't have any currency in Bitmark right now.
Yeah.
So, if I say transfer you 1 Bitcoin for your property, how do you like settle that? So like you don't run off...
So the software right here has a built-in Bitcoin wallet. It's low, sorry. This line right here is... So your software, your Bitmark account, the same seed that generates your Bitmark account can also generate Bitcoin addresses. And so you can hold money that way. If you wanted to, you can connect in Stripe and you can take credit card. Because not everybody likes to take Bitcoin. Right? So those 2 right there. Yeah? Minute. The way the assets are transferred, like say you buy my data, the way it moves from me to you is over the BitTorrent protocol. It's just protected because the blockchain is checking the ownership, like do you really have ownership? And if you don't have ownership, you can't download. But it's just standard BitTorrent. Okay, so here we go. So we've got 3 of these now. I'm going to click on one. And it has a timestamp. So 8:37, so I'm 7 minutes late, sorry. When it was created, so I can show the asset. So here is this data that I was telling you about. It's just all kinds of raw data. I can list this for sale. So let me list it for sale. Let me sell it for a Bitcoin.
Wow.
I mean, it's up to you if you want to buy it. So. It'll take a few seconds. Okay, we must have a bug in the sales server right now. Once this is listed for sale, it would generate a URL that I could share, and I send that out, and then you could click on it, and you put in your Bitmark account, and then you can buy it. Okay. Yes?
So when you list for sale,
yeah.
that actually will create a transaction on your chain?
Yeah, so we have this registry online, and you can see all these properties. So like here's the one I just created, and there's 3 instances of this, and each one has its history. And so when I list something for sale, that's not like a blockchain level action, right? Only transfers are being recorded in the blockchain. So all of this other stuff like listing down the road you can rent, right? So this stuff comes, these are things that you can do as a property owner. You can rent, you can lease, you can lend, all this kind of stuff, sell. So the first one we do is transfer. Yeah, yes?
So how do you deal with, say, so all the data is encrypted, right? So
yes.
For instance, this is your reported data.
Yeah.
So I'm buying your data, and you say it's reported data, but it turns out it's just good to do this today or something.
Yeah.
How do I dispute that, or how does that work with something that you put up there that isn't what it really is?
Down the road, we would work on things like escrow. You can do that pretty easily with a number of different like cryptocurrency type stuff. In the beginning, everything we do looks like you're buying a photo from a photographer you know. You're buying music from somebody that you like. You're buying data, and you know something about this data. You know it came from an iPhone that was signed. So you're a researcher. You need to have the rights to use this. You need to know it's authentic. And so all of our focus from getting the business side going, getting the commerce side going, is about having trust. So so Bitcoin had a very specific problem. How do you allow individuals to exchange value without any trust whatsoever? We're trying to let individuals come to consensus on who owns what. And what that thing that's being owned, well, that's something that's not something code can tell 100% for sure. Right? So ours is a separate kind of class of problems. It's how do we record who owns it? How do you safeguard what's known as the provenance of something? So like, let's say you and I both had a Picasso painting, and my painting was in my garage for the past 50 years. Yours was on loan to the Tate Modern, it was on loan to MoMA, a number of famous museums. If you could prove that that happened, if you could prove that the owners, that this was in that provenance, you would say, then the value of your property is a lot more than mine, even if it's from sort of the same author, same artist, same period of time. So keeping track of who owned what when is what our system is trying to do. What is something that ultimately needs trust. It needs lawyers. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you check redundancy if the one digital asset being registered twice?
So if you try to register an asset that's already in the blockchain, this is kind of a fun case. This is like United States saying that they own California and Mexico saying they own California. This is not a new problem. I could say the one with Taiwan and China, but my wife would kill me. So, conflicting ownership claims. How do you resolve it? The key is that you record all the claims permanently, because who owns what changes over time. So, the same asset, 2 people have claimed ownership and have issued properties from that asset. Okay, 2 people have created property titles. from the perspective of a buyer, you want to look at the one with the most, with the longest provenance. Okay? Most likely sometime in history somebody said, nope, you're not the owner. That's wrong. And so that provenance gets shorter. Yeah. So the way we resolve this is by recording everything. Yeah. I think this is actually kind of a deep, deep philosophical thing, that 100 years from now, who owns what? Who has property rights to what? Is totally different than what it is now. You look at any country, the borders always change. Borders are who owns what. Right? What you want is a record that cannot be tampered with, that cannot be changed, of who claimed ownership over what. Yeah, the moment you have that, now you can do, interesting stuff. When you have war, one of the first things that happens is they destroy all of the land titles. Why? Any asset that you can wipe away the ownership records for, you can have new owners, you can have new wealth. Right? And so this is a system that once an ownership claim was asserted, you can't wipe it away. Yeah. Okay? We're in a private beta, but if anybody wants to try, I'd love for you to try. We're about 1 to 2 months away from a public beta, right? Where anybody can do stuff. So what we're really looking for is people that want to try to sell something, people that would like to maybe develop something with it, people that would be willing to give us feedback on the user interface. Does it make sense? Is it easy to use?
Who designed it?
Who designed it?
Yeah.
We did, yeah.
Oh, you had
No. Chris deals with all the back end. He does real engineering. I don't do any engineering anymore. I'm like the guy that goes and raises money and does business. Yeah.
Looks pretty.
The people that are responsible for making it look pretty, unfortunately, are not here, but they are in Taiwan. So it would be great if you come meet them. Yeah.
So here's a question more
Yeah.
technical.
Sure.
So if somebody wants to develop something based on your technology, how to integrate with you?
Yeah. So we have libraries. We have a lot of kind of interesting, simple command line stuff that Chris has developed in Go. You could use that. We have a Node library. You can use that. So Node.js if you like that instead, or Go. Both are fairly robust, fully open source. Yeah. Those are all public now. So if you are interested, try it. Give us feedback. We need people trying it. Yeah. Okay. Any more questions? Yeah, sure.
Are the network open to every partners or to the public? Because you said that you will record every certificate, the ownership.
Yeah.
Which means if I purchase something in the network, it will be on the record.
Correct, yeah. Yeah, every ownership transfer. Yeah.
And the network is open to the public.
Correct.
So I have no privacy about what video or what music I purchase.
So if you, this is my Bitmark account. It's just some number. So I can choose, hey, do I want to link this number to my my domain name, my Twitter account, my GitHub account? Later on we'll add Facebook. So it's who owns what is like which account owns what. So it's up to you as an individual if you want to let people know who you are. Yeah. The value of property is the owner. This is kind of hard for people when they first hear this, but I think it's the same in Taiwan. But in the U.S., you can look at everyone's home and what they paid for it. It's all public record. You can look at cars, who registered the cars, what's the history of the car, who owned the car, was it wrecked, was it salvaged? All of this stuff is public. So property gets its value through public records. Without public records, property doesn't have much value. Yeah. It's a different concept. Yeah. It's very different than money. Money is so different than property. Yeah.
So, thanks, Sean.
Sure, sure.
And Christopher.
Yeah.
And we'll have a 10 minutes break. 我们休息10分钟，然后厕所在那边，然后刚刚跟你讲，如果现场需要 WiFi 的话，在白板上。
Yeah, please.